Welcome, all beloved of life's urgings and yearnings, moving along the many riverbeds and channels of spirit on its journey toward truth and understanding. Come, immerse your spirits in the healing waters of forgiveness, hope, redemption, and in the gentle waters of joyfulness and gratitude. Let us moor ourselves in the river of life, knowing that we are enough. We are sufficient unto the day just as we are. Each week we gather at the edge of the river of life and enter into the gift of a Sabbath time where we can name the sacred and the holy as they have touched our lives. This morning, Corinne Rosil will light our chalice. This morning's chalice lighting is a responsive reading, and Cindy Leno will provide the responses. If you have a chalice or a candle with you, as I do here, and you might want to take this moment to prepare so you can light it when Corinne lights one for us all. On this morning, all across the country, Unitarian Universalists are, or in the Later parts of the country will be conducting the same ritual of coming together, which is the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of our open faith.
We kindle this flame, the symbol of our shared search for truth and understanding.
We light this chalice in community.
Oh, I'm so sorry that this is giving me a challenge here.
It's okay to have a virtual.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Right.
Thank you. In times of danger and confusion, may this fire bring us courage and commitment.
We light this chalice in faith.
In times of doubt, may its warmth renew our connections to one another and the spirit of life.
We light this chalice in love.
In times of change, let its light illuminate our deepest values, the values which call us forward in the days to come.
We light this chalice with hope.
Thank you, Corinne and Cindy, and thank you to the Reverend Dr. Roger Jones, who wrote those chalice lighting words and the short introduction about how all Unitarian Universalists will light a chalice on this morning. The times of our needs are varied. Some of us arrive today seeking new questions, some seeking encouragement to stay the course, some seeking the nourishment of community, some just to rest in the accustomed traditions between yesterday and tomorrow. This may be your river, the place where you come down, immerse in, and pray, which is not, as I understand it, the entreaty to something or someone else to change our circumstances, but rather is the breathing deeply, the settling ourselves back into balance with our deepest values, getting back into right relationship with ourselves and the world around us. It's a process, kind of like finding that comfortable position for sleeping. We may need to wriggle around, move the pillows, try to lie in several different poses before we find the one that works. On this second day of spring, the pulls of sun and moon on the northern hemisphere of this floating star call us into balance with the equal division of light and dark. As Heather Cox Richardson wrote in her newsletter this morning, we are in that magical time in between seasons, with the bitter cold over, but patches of snow still on the ground, and no sign yet of either buds on the trees, nor black flies. It's a time to call forth a faith within us like that shown by snowdrops, crocuses, and maybe some very bold daffodils in your yard, who bravely stick their tiny shoots above the snow on the promise of spring's growing light and warmth. All this lies within us too, if we but allow ourselves this brief time to remember this Sabbath to reset our internal clocks to the wealth and the richness we already possess within, among, between, and beyond. We have found in this open faith tradition the faith that encourages courage, commitment, holding on, connection, and a community sharing values that call us forward into a deeper life. And when we least expect it, it encourages those who have not yet known such an open, flowing faith tradition to come into this river and pray with us as we do. This morning, Anne Leno shares a story of one such moment when the Spirit of Life reached out.
Back around 2009, 2010, 10 members of First Parish, many of them choir members, attended a week-long Habitat for Humanity build in Biloxi, Mississippi, to help with the reconstruction after Hurricane Katrina. Habitat was partnering with the Salvation Army, so many of the groups that had gone down there before us were also from religious communities. However, there had been no UU churches there. Our site manager was very interested in learning more about UUism, and he even Googled it one night. We had started each day on the work site with a morning prayer, and now that he knew a bit more about our non-creed religion, he wasn't quite sure how to handle that. He asked if our group would lead the morning prayer, and we did so by singing a beautiful, harmonious version of Spirit of Life. So Olga will now lead us in this same hymn now.
In the Christian liturgical calendar, we are entering the season that celebrates the teacher and visionary, Jesus. The scriptures tell us of Jesus' arrival into Jerusalem, carrying with him the hope for peaceful resolution to the acts of tyranny of the Roman Empire over the people. Jesus is but one person, but he gains the hearts and minds of the multitudes, and they follow his example. Over time, the lessons and acts of Jesus and his followers change the world. One of us, one person, can be the catalyst for so much change. We can all think of people who have been leaders for change, for the peaceful resolution, the restoration of that which is good and right and equitable. I have a story to share that comes from the experience of a service learning trip to New Orleans in the years following the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. Before the storm ever came, there was a part of New Orleans called the Lower Ninth Ward. It was a place where many people lived in financial poverty. Many were unemployed or underemployed, and it was difficult for them even to own cars or have the bus fare to leave the ward to go to work or to shop. Large chain grocery stores chose not to have their stores in the Lower Ninth Ward, as it was not in their best interests. This place was known as a food desert. There was one family, however, that owned a small grocery known as the Blair Grocery. They provided a place for the families in the area to buy food. The Blair Grocery also served as a gathering place for the community. The Lower Ninth Ward may have been financially impoverished, but it was rich in community. The people had strong ties to the place and to one another. The churches and the centers like the Blair Grocery were very important to this community. Then came Hurricane Katrina. Most of the Lower Ninth Ward was completely destroyed, just swept away by the floodwaters. During this time, one person, a teacher and a visionary from New York City, decided that he had to come to New Orleans to help. He purchased an old school bus, and with a few friends, he drove to the Lower Ninth Ward. After some time working with others for many months to clean up the debris and devastation, then the real work, the work of rebuilding, began. At the same time, the family that owned the Blair Grocery knew that it was vitally important to rebuild the fabric of the community, the churches, schools, and community centers that would offer hope to those individuals and families who were brave enough to return and rebuild their homes. The family gave what remained of the grocery to this teacher, Nate Turner, and to his seed of an idea for its restoration and its future mission. And thus began our school at Blair Grocery. Our school at Blair Grocery has worked to create a place where people of all ages can learn and grow, literally grow food for the community. It is a sustainable agriculture farm and learning center. Many people have come to our school at Blair Grocery to volunteer, to be the change, and help this organization to blossom. It has been quite a journey, and our school at Blair Grocery continues to grow and bring new life and hope to the Lower Ninth Ward. One of us, one person can be the teacher, the visionary that helps to bring light, hope, and peace out into the world. May we all be one of the ones that adds up to the multitude that shines out light onto this world. May it be so. Amen.
We are grateful, as always, for Deborah's stories, even when she is unable to be with us on Zoom. These are inspiring stories, and about the experience in Mississippi, and Deborah's of her brief contact with the Our School at Blair Grocery. They remind us not only that change is possible, but that we already have the means to make a large difference. They demonstrate how our small but vital Unitarian Universalist communities and values can and do have meaning and purpose in the world as we mix and share and work among others. In our sharing and gathering, in our work within, among, and beyond, to lean into lives shaped and shaping our values and spirituality, we learn our own means, our limits and our gifts, our capacities, our deep soul needs for nourishment and also for activism, for engaging the spirit of life with the ordinary day-to-day living. Thankful for the blessing of being together in community, we hold all these joys, sorrows, and concerns in our hearts. Singing together, draw the circle wide. In the gospel stories about Jesus's life and teaching, 3 of the storytellers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, report a story of Jesus and his disciples seeking some quiet, rest, renewal time after long days of healing and teaching others about the possibility of trusting in love rather than in the Roman Empire and its incursion into all corners of life in those days. They went into a boat to cross the water and find some quiet before returning to this bone-wearying but soul-lifting work, which would soon find them on a hillside having to feed 5,000 souls with no apparent source of sustenance. But that is another day and another service. So while crossing the water, a storm arises and Jesus is sleeping right through it. Perhaps you, like me, are not particularly pleased when you're feeling seasick and another passenger acts as though they were on dry land. But the disciples, though perhaps not seasick, are definitely frightened and cannot sleep through it. So they awaken Jesus, who is taking a much needed physical rest. Exhaustion might be a good word. And ask him to calm the storm, which he does. And ask them why they didn't have faith. The story reminds me of an overtired toddler, so tired they can't calm themselves for sleep, and so that is the moment at which they often have what we call a tantrum. As adults, in my very anecdotal experience, including my own, is that our grown-up tantrums, when we are exhausted and spent and hungry and stressed, often become our anxiety projected onto those around us. Perhaps that's what the disciples did to Jesus, expecting him to calm the storm of their inner anxiety and exhaustion, rather than taking care of themselves and sleeping. Caring for others, we all know, is physically, emotionally, and spiritually tiring work. And while we are mostly very good at caring for the needs of others, our culture is very short on encouraging us to care for ourselves beyond our minimal needs, especially for our spiritual and emotional selves. We are all in need of some restorative and renewing time in these days. Teachers, parents, social workers, therapists, healthcare workers, first responders, in fact, all of us. Ours is not a culture that encourages rest, renewal, or even grounding. Ours is a culture that keeps asking us to give, to push, to go the extra mile, to go beyond our means physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We may find ourselves so wrapped up in achievements or participating, or even see it as just being a very good citizen, that we take no time to rest, to renew, and to nourish our own souls. The result is not unlike a toddler. We lose our center. We can't even hear what our own bodies are telling us when they're saying, enough is enough, go get some rest. This pandemic may offer us, in the midst of its great sadness and loss of life, a chance to learn how to sleep, to rest, to renew through the storms over which we have no control, in order to control the one thing we can learn to do, to listen to our deepest, ancient inner voice of wisdom. Wendell Berry is more articulate and beautiful and has much to say about listening to this voice in his poetry and writings, and through his love of the land and farming.
Excerpts from Wendell Berry's manifesto, The Mad Farmer Liberation Front, written in 1973. Every day do something that won't compute. Love the Lord, love the world, work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophesy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Swear allegiance to what is nighest in your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox, who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.
The earth is our mother.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you, Cindy. The earth is our mother, and we must take care of her. But how shall we do this? We already bring guilt and an urgency born of apocalyptic fear to this task. But the fear and the guilt are not truly useful. Too often they misguide us into the kind of action that had the disciples awaken Jesus in a panic moment. And the snoring you hear is my beloved beagle. Joanna Macy has spent her life working on this question of how shall we take care of Mother Earth, and how do we take care of ourselves? For guilt and apocalyptic fear are not caring for ourselves. She offers us this meditation to reconnect and reattach ourselves to some aspect of deep knowing about our internal means, what we have to spend, not financially, but with our wholeness, and how to live within them. This is a bit of a long meditation. I think we all know that Emmylou, who is snoring away, is going to meditate with us. At the end of the meditation, we will go into a time of silence in which it would be nice just to go into gallery view and see one another, if that is possible. So I invite you to sit, and if you need to turn off your video through this meditation, do so. And to close your eyes and take 3 breaths just to feel yourself on your seat wherever you are. What are you? What am I? Intersecting cycles of water, earth, air, and fire. That's what I am, and that's what you are. Water, blood, lymph, mucus, sweat, tears. Inner oceans tugged by the moon, tides within and tides without. Streaming fluids floating our cells, washing and nourishing through endless riverways of gut and vein and capillary. Moisture pouring in and through and out of you, of me, in the vast poem of the hydrological cycle. You are that. I am that. Earth, matter made from rock and soil. It is pulled by the moon as the magma circulates through the planet heart and roots such molecules into biology. Earth pours through us, replacing each cell in the body every 7 years. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We ingest, incorporate, and excrete the earth, are made from earth. I am that. You are that. Air, the gaseous realm, the atmosphere, the planet's membrane, the inhale and the exhale. Breathing out carbon dioxide to the trees and breathing in their fresh exudations. oxygen kissing each cell, awake, atoms dancing in orderly metabolism interpenetrating. That dance of the air cycle, breathing the universe in and out again, is what you are, is what I am. Fire from our sun that fuels all life, drawing up plants and raising the waters to the sky to fall again, replenishing. The inner furnace of your metabolism burns with the fire of the Big Bang that first sent matter energy spinning through space and time, and the same fire as the lightning that flashed into the primordial soup, catalyzing the birth of organic life. You were there, I was there. For each cell of our bodies is descended in an unbroken chain from that event. Through the desire of atom for molecule, of molecule for cell, of cell for organism. In the spawning of forms, death was born simultaneously with sex before we divided from the plant realm. So in our sexuality, we can feel ancient stirrings that connect us with plant as well as animal life. We come from them in an unbroken chain, through fish learning to walk the land, feeling scales turning to wings, through migrations in the ages of life. We have been but recently in human form. If Earth's whole history were compressed into 24 hours, beginning at midnight, organic life would begin only at 5 p.m. Mammals emerge at 11:30 p.m., and from amongst them, at only seconds to midnight, our human species. In our long planetary journey, we have taken far more ancient forms than these we now wear. Some of those forms we remember in our mother's womb, wearing vestigial tails and gills, growing fins for hands. Certain times in that journey, we died to old forms, let go of old ways, allowing new ones to emerge. But nothing is ever lost. Through forms pass, all return. Each worn out cell consumed, recycled through mosses, leeches, birds of prey. Think to your next death. Will your flesh and bones back into the cycle. Surrender. Love the plump worms you will become. Launder your weary being through the river of life. Beholding you, I behold as well all the different creatures that compose you. The mitochondria, the cells, the intestinal bacteria, the life teeming on the surface of the skin. The great symbiosis that is you, the incredible coordination and cooperation of countless beings. You're that too, just as your body is a part of a much larger symbiosis living in wider reciprocities. Be conscious of that give and take when you move among the trees. Breathe your pure carbon dioxide on a leaf and sense it breathing fresh oxygen back to you. Remember again and again the old cycles of partnership. Draw on them in this time of trouble. By your very nature and the journey you have made, there is in you deep knowing of belonging. Draw on it now in this time. You have earth-bred wisdom of your interexistence with all that is. Take courage and power in it now, that we may help each other awaken in this time. Let us take a silence for 7 breaths. And if you can, put your camera on gallery view so we may be with one another. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Blessings. We have been living beyond our means for too long. By we, I mean a culture, a society. We have been living beyond our means. Usually we speak of means as a code word for finances, and that's a small piece of how I use this term. But I think more today of our means for endurance, for processing information, especially too many choices, for using what we already have instead of needing something different, and finally of our spiritual means, our strength, our inner resources, our hope, our values. Now I know this isn't news to any of you. I think that living beyond our means is a hallmark of what some theologians have long named as empire culture. And ours is by no means, yes, Dennis, that is a pun, the first empire culture. For many theologians, the culture of the Pharaoh in Egypt was an empire culture. Empire culture was what the 15 named biblical prophets addressed as the issues for the Israelites, who sometimes fell prey to the values of empire culture and were warned against it. Jesus, too, addressed the issues of empire in the Roman Empire. What are the values of empire culture? That who we are, what we have, what we bring to the table is never enough. Another way to think of this is that our means, the gifts, the strengths, the love, the hopes, the values that each of us is given as life itself, which, like snowflakes, are not the same nor even equal among us. That these gifts, empire culture would tell us, are not okay, are not enough. And in that single falsehood, we often become driven to make of ourselves something else, something we are not. We ignore our body's call to rest. We stop hearing our connection to the ancient and wise voices of cells within. and beyond. Here's how Wendell Berry begins that beautiful Mad Farmer poem that Cindy gave us and graced us with some excerpts from. But it begins this way: love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready made. If I could tell you all the times in my life that I have given up myself for those things beyond me. We don't have time. It would be a 40-hour sermon at least. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die. And isn't that what our culture teaches us, to be afraid to die? We don't talk about death, we hide death. And you, Barry continues, will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. I'm currently reading a book about how our identities and our information online has become the commodity of this culture and its new capitalism. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. How many of you, like me, don't pick up the phone when it rings anymore without looking to see if it's really somebody human that you know on the other side of the phone? When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. The role of all empires is to enforce a social order that keeps the empire at the top and others beholden to it. We've talked about this before as we think about white-centered culture, Euro-Western-centered culture. Empire functions at its best when its constituents internalize their own worthlessness without the empire. When there appears to be no choice. So in this empire, we die of hypertension, of diabetes, of overwork, of oversaturation of substances unhealthy to animal life, including humans. I don't know about you, but I've become an expert at recognizing all the ways in which I fall short and am not enough. And I'm not speaking here of material goods I do or don't have, but rather of the conscious stream of education and well-being articles that fill up the news, even the liberal media news. How to be a better parent in the pandemic, how to sleep better, how to lose weight while following this latest eating pattern or taken from our ancestors. What foods will or won't set you on the path to an early death? How can you best handle those difficult social situations in the office or online dating? How many hours or minutes of exercise will make us perform at our peak every moment of every day? How to live more sustainably or be the best eco-activist? An instruction manual for being the best comes at us at virtually every turn in this 21st century world. Most of it appears focused on performing at peak, being the best boss, employer, employee, lover, aging person, parent, child, activist, self-promoter, teacher, clergy person. Even my regular diet of spiritual newsletters focus on helping us to be more vulnerable, more centered, more grounded, less attached, it feels like more perfect. And then I wonder, what has happened to our own knowing, to my own knowing? In this environment of rapid technological and scientific growth, how do we cultivate the garden of our own knowing? How do we hold on to the stones of deepest knowing self, even as we must bathe in the fast-moving river of life with all its swirling eddies that can distract or catch us up in a whirlpool? Here's the thing. Just like the meditation says, we already know. We already have the capacity to develop and deepen our means to live in these ways. There is no negative cost to our wholeness, nor to the innate wholeness of all creation, to develop and strengthen our own means. The stories we heard today of sharing Unitarian Universalism through common work of cleaning up a historical disaster in Hurricane Katrina, of one person's idea to start a community garden out of a former grocery store so people can eat and learn again what they know in their deepest souls, how to grow their own food. That story sparked a colleague of mine's decision to grow a vegetable garden in the front yard with a few flowers and simply open it to the neighbors to come and take as they need. There are multiple stories like this in the news. They're not the Empire stories, they're our stories. They're stories of practicing resurrection, resurrecting our connection to our deepest knowing, that we do not need to be the best. We do not need to be at peak every moment in order not only to survive, but to thrive. We do not need empire to help us to know. We already have that in the garden and the riverbed of our own souls and being. How will we rest and renew and take the time to put ourselves back in touch? Our small steps are much more important than big, huge, dramatic ones. The caring for the bees, these are the things I've learned from the few of you that I've gotten to know over these last 11 weeks. The caring for bees, the tapping of the sap, the growing of your own gardens, the creation of music that restores souls, the singing, these small acts that you do, coming out on a cold night with candles to stand masked and distance to support our democracy and freedom. These are the small acts that practice resurrection, that grow our souls. Together, we are in a time of change. We do not know what the future will bring, but we are renewed by the waters of community and covenant and can recommit ourselves to the possibility of a greater wholeness, a wholeness reflecting inherent worth and dignity of all creation, learning its interconnectedness as we travel together on this earth, our blue boat home, practicing daily small acts of resurrection. Olga will lead us in our closing hymn, Blue Boat Home.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my violent heart can say, I've been sailing all my life, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue sun, my sail, and moon, my rider, as I ply the stormy sea, leaning over the edge and wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with ship companions, all in kindred pilgrim souls, making a way in the light of the heavens and the beautiful blue boat. I give thanks to the ways of holding me, hear the great winds urging me on. Read the infinite sea before me, sing the sky may sail a song. I was born upon the battlefields, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Help us to be always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, May Sarton wrote, and good stewards of our means, who know that without true freedom of spirit, our deepest ancient human knowing atrophies. If we do not look up at the stars, we cannot see the heavens, just as without darkness nothing comes to birth, without light nothing flowers.
Olga, I muted you to drop an echo.
Thank